Yep, the Celtics are still frustrating. Yep, they are still up and down, and I am not sure what the future holds. So I'm going to talk through it with Tom Westerholm of the Genotime Podcast and Boston.com right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Boston, baby, we do what you can't. Locked on number 18, Tatum and Brown, J-team, step back. We gon' wet that and slay teams. Of course, the Celtics, who else could it be? Screaming like KG with the Larry O.B. Karalis above average, assessing the team status. Best daily pod, no cap, salary matching. Clutch like Bird the DJ, keep John on replay. Prime time, dapping up the truth on the sideline. Raining J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. B.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast. Thank you for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. This show is free and available daily, Monday through Friday, everywhere podcasts exist, and on YouTube. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm John Karalis. I cover the team for Boston Sports Journal. I've written a book called The Boston Celtics All-Time All-Stars. Pick that up wherever books are sold online. Today's show brought to you by TrueBill. TrueBill is the new app that saves you money by helping you identify and stop paying for the subscriptions you don't want or need, and can even negotiate better deals on those you want to keep. So the Boston Celtics are frustrating. They are all over the place. I need to get a handle on this team. And as usual, when I need to get a handle on this team, I bring somebody in to discuss what is going on today. It's Tom Westerholm, my friend, my former coworker, and now one of the hosts of the Genotime podcast, and one of the sports writers over there at Boston.com. So let's just dive right into the conversation with me and Tom Westerholm. My guy, Tom Westerholm here. I always love when we get the chance to sit here and talk, and under such great circumstances. Tom, how you doing?
Man, I'm well rested. I'm just invigorated by all the basketball that we've watched. It's beautiful basketball. It's a beautiful time of year. It's so warm outside. It's just it's exactly what you want in just kind of a stretch here.
What, honestly, like such a shitty confluence of events here. It sunsets at 4:10 p.m. The Celtics are just so inconsistent. They look great. They look terrible. And now we're covering the team from the East Coast when Dennis Schroeder doesn't talk until 3 a.m. So.
And look, I know there's no sympathy out there for beat writers, and that we're all just like, just like whiny stuff. Totally fair. Like, that is 100% fair. But also, I'm tired. So, screw you.
I'm tired. The week is over, and the Celtics went back to playing like just what they were doing in October. So it's all just kind of lined up. Like, this is my second coffee of the day, and I'm not even halfway through my coffee consumption. But we're looking at this Celtics team that can look so good when they put it all together, and can look so bad when they don't. And the biggest frustration for everybody is that this is just how it's been. There's no difference from last year when they put it all together. Last year, even during COVID pandemic, when they put it all together and tried, it was like, okay, yeah, we see it with these guys. And this year, okay, no Jaylen Brown. Got to accept that. Look, no Jaylen Brown, that makes a difference. When Schroeder doesn't have it going, then the whole house of cards can fall. But at the same time, there's just no excuse for 23 turnovers and 33 points off of turnovers against the Clippers. So the question I asked to Tatum, and I'll throw it out to you, is basically, at what point are all the bad days just bad days? And at what point is this just who you are as a team?
I honestly, when you asked that question to Tatum, I thought it was a really good one. I think I've talked about this before, and I think the case for optimism with this team is still just that they have a deeper team than last year. They have more talent coming off the bench. They have more pieces. The young guys who are on this year's team are better versions of themselves than they were last year. You look at Grant Williams, Romeo Langford, obviously, these guys have gotten better. And the pieces around the stars have gotten better. And it just kind of comes down to, in a lot of ways, is like, can Tatum, and then when he comes back, can Jaylen Brown, can these guys consistently be, at the forefront? Can they consistently drag this team to wins with some more support behind them? And that can be your case for optimism if, truly like a glass half full, glass half empty thing, right? Because if you're a glass half full kind of person, do you really think Jason Tatum is going to, shoot this poorly from three all season? Like, it's tough to see that, but, maybe he will. I don't know. And if you're a glass half empty person, you can also say, well, look, Jalen and Jason were the best players on last year's team, which also started 13-13, as our pal B-Rob tweeted out last night. Like, last year's team and this year's team have both started 13-13 for whatever circumstances there are. So, I mean, look, I think we're rapidly. I've tried to maintain a more kind of measured, like I guess more positive approach with this team, because I thought that the depth was significantly better, and I think that actually has borne out. Like, I think that has pretty clearly been the case, and so to me, it always made sense that they were going to kind of turn things around and they were going to put together a better season. But I mean, we're 26 games into the season. This is a very representative sample size, and they are just, like you asked Tatum, there's very little reason to believe that they're, anything other than what they're showing, which is just a 500 basketball team.
And this is I think we are really at a point here where it's kind of even on either side. The player's perspective, the Tatum perspective, where he kind of seemed taken aback by the question, and his answer was basically like, well, we did have good games on this trip. And my question wasn't about the whole trip. It's about when you're bad, it's always the same bad.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. It's not that you're bad. If there were 13-13 and the 13 losses came in different ways, maybe the feeling is a little bit different. And also, let me just put out there, I'm like one of the most notoriously positive people about this team in general. So I do think that they've played better basketball. The basketball on the floor is generally better than it was in October, especially when they've got it going. When they're playing well, their good game in October versus a good game this month it's worlds different this month. The issue is the players see these bad games as, hey, it's just a bad game. It's fine. Just like any other job. You have a bad podcast. I have a bad. It happens. We got to move on. We got to watch our film. We got to move on. But the other side has, I think, it's an equally valid now argument that, no, you know what? The loss to the Lakers, the loss to the Clippers, the loss to the Bulls, the loss to the Cavs, the loss to the Spurs, they all have so many of the same exact elements that it's hard to deny. It's hard to sit there and just take what the players say as fact. And my real question, I guess, for this team is, are they just, I don't want to say, like, the word that comes to my mind is like some level of arrogance that makes them think like, oh no, we got this, man. We got it. Are they too close to this situation where they're like, no, man, we got it. And they don't realize like they should be saying like, oh wow, we need to fundamentally change our mentality going into these games versus, no, we just got to watch some film and be better here. That's the push and pull here for me.
Well, and to your point, I think it's very easy for teams to kind of fall into that trap of like, we've seen how to be really good, right? Like we've seen what it looks like when we're really good. We know how to do this, even if they aren't doing that they aren't good on a consistent basis. I think that's a really easy trap to get into because, I mean, we all like to look at ourselves in like the best possible light, right? Like, and so if you are an NBA player, if you're on an NBA team and you are like, hey, we've had these games where we look like contenders, it's pretty easy to convince yourself, well, when the playoffs roll around, we're going to, kind of be able to flip that switch. And I mean, fans hate to hear that because, the fans are the ones who are stuck watching, 82 games and wishing and wanting to see the team flip the switch the whole time. And I think that there really is something to the idea that like, you can't just flip the switch, in part because you need to practice all of the good habits that you do in the good games. That's what I think, a big part of like, hey, stringing things together. You hear coaches talk about that all the time. You hear players talk about that. When you start to string things together, that's when you practice being good for longer periods of time. And I just think that's one of the issues with this team is we haven't seen them string things together. We've seen the flashes. We've seen the little bits here and there that look like a really good team, that look like they could make some noise in the postseason. And, you can intellectually, I mean, you can talk yourself into it pretty easily, right? Like, because there's talent on this team. But until we see them string it together, until we see them practice the good habits and build something that actually kind of builds on top of itself, right? Because sometimes a team, puts together a few good performances and then it starts to snowball in a good way. And we just haven't seen this team do anything that snowballs. It's just like, like a little pocket of good play over here, little pocket over there, but nothing that just kind of comes together and makes up a cohesive whole. So I don't know. I mean, I think, if anything, I think that's one of the biggest issues, because there's plenty of talent on this team. There's plenty of there have been good performances. To Tatum's point, there have been moments where they look really good, but I mean, you need that snowball. You need that kind of exponential effect.
Back for more of the conversation with Tom in a second. First, I've got to tell you about TrueBill. Do you know why these subscriptions keep showing up? These free subscriptions that seem like you don't want, you don't need. They're a scam. Corporations are out there to just trick you into signing up and then forgetting about it so they can take your money. TrueBill is the new app that helps you stop doing that. On average, people save up to $720 a year with TrueBill because companies make subscriptions hard to cancel. TrueBill makes it simple, very simple. Link your accounts. TrueBill will cancel your unwanted subscriptions in just one tap. Your TrueBill concierge is there if you want to cancel something, but you don't have to do it. They will take care of it for you. Do not do what I did and forget about a subscription and then have to deal with all the calls and emails and chat bots and all of that stuff just to get your money back. TrueBill will save you the hassle and save you money. They've saved over 2 million users. They've saved over $100 million. So don't fall for the subscription scams. Start canceling today at truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. That's right now at truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. Could save you thousands a year. truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. And looking at the Celtics kind of streaks, no win streak bigger than 3. Yeah. And that's kind of sucks when you look at the Houston Rockets, who have won 7 games in a row. The Houston freaking Rockets have won 7 games in a row. The Celtics can't put together a streak of more than 3. And okay, so
never to let Garrison Matthews go. Never.
But you look at games that they could have won. There's the Dallas game where Luka hits that shot where they didn't look good. It's kind of similar, very similar type of performances. A loss to the Cavaliers, which was a bad loss to the Cavaliers. And right there, you win those 2 games, and that's 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's your 7-game winning streak. So the Celtics, they absolutely can make this. They can go on a streak. And let me call up the schedule first, because the schedule does play into this, right? Like this is a real, and this is part of why, Tom, that these 2 losses really, really hurt, because Lakers was a winnable game, and the Lakers were playing 2 games, their second game in 7 nights. So they're super well rested. They came out with a ton of energy, but that was a game that they could have won. The Clippers game, certainly they could have won. Now you play Phoenix, Milwaukee, Golden State.
Well, just to interject there real quick too, they could have won the Utah game. Like, you score 130 points, you got to win that game. Like, I know Utah's really good and they're an awesome offensive team, but I mean, that's a tough one to drop.
That is a tough one to drop. I mean, they hit a near record amount of 3-pointers.
Right. Yeah.
Like I'm willing to overlook. The reason I'm willing to overlook that game is they had it. They were right there. Yeah. And then was it Donovan Mitchell, Mike Conley hit these insane threes. You're like, what? Like, what? Like, Conley's 3 was his 7th in a row, like 7 for 7 in that game. You're like, come on, man. Like, at some point that just becomes a game where, like, I compared it on Twitter, like, this is, you just throw your controller and reset the game, because the computer was always going to win that game, no matter how well you played. But now you've got 2 losses here. You have a real risk of going 1-4 on this trip. Yep. And you have a real risk of going on now a 5-game losing streak and 6 losses in 7 games. And this is going to be really, really tough. They always play the Warriors well. So who knows what's going to happen there. But the rest of this month is going to be a real grind. And not only are these 2 losses tough in the standings, because the Celtics could have been 4th, coming into this, You want to pile up these wins when you can get them because the rest of this month is going to be so bad. January looks great. Like January, Orlando, Spurs, the Knicks twice, the Pacers. You mix in a Philly, a Chicago, a Washington, but Pelicans, Portland, Charlotte, all at home, Kings at home. There are a ton of winnable games in January where they can. What I don't want, Tom, is for them to come out of January on a huge run and have it be like the third quarter of last night's game. Like, wow, what a run. Oh, you only won by 3. Like you come out of a huge January run and be like, oh, great, you got back to 500.
Right. Well, you can also look at it even worse than that, because you can also look at a lot of those teams and be like, well, they've lost 1 to the Knicks already. They've lost 2 to the Wizards already. Like some of those teams, they lost 1 to the Spurs. Some of those teams you mentioned, they've lost games to already. And I did want to just point out too, like I think you brought it up. I think it's always kind of an interesting stat. Cleaning the Glass has this it's called win differential, which is basically how many wins a team should have based on their offensive and defensive ratings. Mm-hmm. And it's been funny, like the last 4 years, the Celtics have been just at the absolute bottom of the league in win differential, basically meaning based on their stats, they're losing games that they should win. And this year's team, according to Cleaning the Glass, should have, based on their net rating, should be 15-11, which would account for the 2 games that you were bringing up there, right? Like those 2 like games that they definitely should have won. So it's just an odd stat that I always think is kind of interesting, because I do think it speaks to the fact that this team's net rating isn't always that bad. And I think part of that is because, they lose these games where they go down 21 and then they come back and end up losing by 3. And that kind of fixes their net rating in certain ways, or at least it kind of levels it out. And it kind of papers over the fact that this team is just they have a tendency of, falling too far behind and not being able to rally, or, kind of having a really bad fourth quarter and just kind of losing it down the stretch. They're very creative in the ways that they manage to lose games without destroying their net rating. I will give them credit for that.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. I know that I definitely can be on that roller coaster. The negative, when they lose, the negatives really shine through, and when they win, I tend to really focus on the positive stuff. When I look at that Clippers game, getting a little more specific, Jason Tatum, everything kind of revolves around Jason Tatum, especially with Jaylen Brown out, and we don't know how much longer he's going to be out. They keep saying we want him to be 100%, and they keep saying like 85 or 90, and who knows? Maybe he'll play against Phoenix. Maybe he won't play for the rest of the month. The way it's going right now, who knows?
Yeah.
But Tatum in that game, and Tatum, I think, in recent games, seems to be, let me take these jumpers first, and then later figures out okay, I got to get to the rim. And it's not as easy as he can get to the rim every single time that he wants. But you see him breaking guys down. And I do think that the Celtics probably need to be a little bit more focused on, all right, let's find a way to get Jason going downhill. One suggestion I made in last night's show was, let's just flip Schroeder and Richardson. Schroeder to the bench, start Smart at the top of the key as your point guard, get Richardson in there because he can still be a slasher and get into the paint. And this way, the offense is much more focused on Tatum coming around. You set the picks and getting Tatum on the move, where he's not just catching and standing, versus, just waiting around for Schroeder to do his thing. Because for all the good things that Schroeder does, and I'm not saying minimize his role or even take him out down the stretch.
Right.
But when Schroeder's the starting point guard, 2 things happen. Tatum spots up and waits and catches the ball in a standstill. And Marcus Smart starts off the ball and starts in the corner and works his way up. All 6 of his threes last night were above the break. And that's horrible. When Marcus Smart starts on the ball and you start setting picks for Tatum, Tatum catches the ball on the move and can make a play off the dribble, and then Marcus Smart then does whatever and ends up in the corner, and those corner threes from Smart are fine. So I would like to see either either a switch in the starting lineup or at least some play calling that involves Smart with the ball in his hands and gets that dynamic. Back to wrap up the conversation with Tom Westerholm in just a minute. First, I got to tell you about Built Bar. You know about Built Bars. I've been talking about them a ton. They are the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, but they're even better because they are low calorie, low sugar, low in net carbs, low in fat, but high in protein. So you get the best of both worlds, delicious and healthy. And there are so many flavors, it's hard to choose. We know the raspberry or mint brownie, the cherry or double chocolate choice, cookies and cream or peanut butter brownie. Those can be tough decisions. So go to built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15, and you can make your choice. You can try one. You can use that promo code every single time. Every time, LOCKED15, to get 15% off your order. So get some for yourself. If you're stuck and you need some holiday stocking stuffers, go back, use that promo code again. Plenty of flavors to throw into those stockings for the people who you know love chocolate or peanut butter or all that other stuff. Grab one. It's cold outside. You want to chill with a cup of hot chocolate. Dip your Built Bar into the hot chocolate. Give yourself a treat without really blowing up what you're trying to do, watching your weight, your calories, and all of that stuff over the winter. I know how hard that can be. So Built.com, promo code LOCKED15. You're going to get 15% off every time at Built.com. BetOnline has you covered all season for more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Football and basketball season marching on, football going to the playoffs, and BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action. So head on over to the new updated desktop or mobile site. Sign up today, get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code LOCKEDON to get that welcome bonus. From basketball to football, NHL, boxing, and UFC, or your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. Please gamble responsibly.
So I really like that idea, in part because if you look at the numbers for the Celtics starting lineup with Jalen out, with Schroeder in there, it's a disaster. They're like minus 12.5 points per 100 possession. They're just getting like shelled in that starting lineup with the double bigs. And I know, I saw a couple people on Twitter kind of complaining about the double big lineup. And I don't think it's the double big. I don't think the double bigs are the issue, because if you look at the Celtics normal starting lineup, I believe they were like plus 10 with Jalen in there. And one of the things I like putting Richardson in there, because Josh Richardson is in some ways kind of a poor man's Jaylen Brown, right? Where he's really good in that mid-range. Mm-hmm. He does hit some threes. He can handle the ball a little bit better than you'd kind of expect. Like, I think there is something to that where he's a little bit more similar to Jalen, and maybe that dynamic would just work a little bit better, because Schroeder does a lot of really good things. And to your point, like, I think there's a lot of games where it helps the Celtics to have him in down the stretch, even with some of his defensive liabilities. But I mean, when he's, literally every time he's walking the ball up the court, and it's like that gives everybody time to get set. That gives the defense time to get set. Like, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. But to your larger point, I do think that something needs to change, because obviously, this team goes as far as Tatum is going to take them. We say it over and over and over again. It doesn't feel like he's being kind of put in those positions to do that particularly well right now.
Yeah, I just want to see, like, I think it's kind of, I kind of feel like it's like right there. And let me ask you this: Are we analyzing this way too deeply? Because Jaylen Brown's going to come back, and theoretically, if he comes back at 100% and they manage this thing right, he shouldn't re-injure it. Like, if he's good, then he's good, and he should come back and play the rest of the season. Let's assume that he comes back and just plays a regular season. Are we just like losing our minds over nothing?
Well, no, because I think one of the things that's happened is, like, Jalen and Jason need to figure out how to kind of complement each other better this year. Like, it's like, if you look at the stats, like, Tatum has struggled in games where Jalen plays this year. And that's for a variety of reasons. Like, there's a million things that affect that. Certainly the beginning of the season, where Tatum was really, really struggling to put anything together offensively, that has a huge impact on all of those stats. I know they've floated around Twitter a little bit, but it is something the Celtics need to address. And it's something that Jalen and Jason need to kind of fix. Like, they have to get better at playing together. So yes, I mean, when we get really granular, of course, we're analyzing, everything game to game. Like, that's what we do. But I do think that there is something there. And yeah, whether it's, whether we're talking about getting Schroeder out of the lineup, to maximize Tatum and, putting Richardson in there, or whether we're talking about the return of Jalen, it kind of becomes the same conversation either way. One way or the other, the Celtics have to figure out how to make Jalen and Jason, how to help them get better. And then those guys have to figure out how to play together and how to make the team better, because like everything rests on their shoulders. So yeah, I mean, it's not I don't think it's making a lot out of nothing at all. I think that that's pretty much going to be the story of the entire season is whether Jalen's in the lineup or not, whether Tatum's in the lineup or not, how do those guys get maximized, from themselves and from their teammates?
I mean, there is a function of, especially when, I'm doing a daily podcast and writing every day. And it's like, you can't help but drill way, way down, like you said, to that granular molecular level where you're like, okay, maybe I'm a little overanalyzing a few of these things, which is certainly possible. And I will admit that there's a possibility that I might be going into too deep in things that don't matter. That said, Tom, why is Robert Williams broken?
Dude, I don't know. It's a bummer, man. Yeah. I mean, like I don't have any good answer for you, man. Like, I mean, honestly, it's funny because like Rob is such a unique player that you don't always have like a great idea of like why he's working either. You know what I mean? It's like, I guess it's like he just jumps over everybody. I guess that works.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's he's kind of an enigma anyway. But yeah, I mean, like last night was tough to watch. Like he had a really tough night.
Man, some of those, it's the old bad habits. And I wonder, like, I wish I could get into the mind of Ime Udoka, because he said this from the beginning, that we've got a lot of bad habits to break. It's not going to happen overnight. And I feel like this is one of those, all right, I think we fixed this. And I was like, oh, now this is, what happened? Oh, this is broken again? Well, I thought we just fixed the Robert Williams thing. I was focused on this other thing. And now here's Rob. Remember, Rob is such a good passer, but then all of a sudden now he was just, casual with the ball, loose with the ball, doesn't even begin to describe what he was. And then the defensive slip-ups, like, I don't know what's going on with him. And it probably feels temporary. I don't want to go too deep into it and think, what's wrong with Robert Williams, even though I made the joke to make you laugh. But there is like a little bit of a, okay, you dismiss a couple of games and you're like, all right. Well, he just got benched in the second half of a game against the Clippers, where you would think against Zubac that Robert Williams' athleticism could really, really help. And he played himself off the floor. And it's just an odd kind of like regression, even though probably temporary, from Rob.
Yeah, and I think to your point, you mentioned the kind of the defensive progress that he's made. That's where it's the most discouraging, right? Is like for a lot of the season this year, 2 years ago, if you talked about Rob Williams, it was always, wow, he gets some blocked shots, but the man is literally never in the right position. Like he,
right.
If he was in the right position, it was like a stopped clock is right twice a day type kind of situation. But that hasn't been the case this year until recently. Like, so that's definitely been disappointing. I think to your point about Ime, it's got to kind of feel like that. The little squirrel in Ice Age where he puts the acorn in and he's like trying to stop all the cracks from happening all at once. And it's got to kind of feel like that. Like he's, all right, we fixed this thing. All right, well now this thing is broken. Okay, the offense is back. All right, but now we're giving up 137 points. Like, guys are starting to figure it out. Well, Rob Williams is struggling now. Like it's a lot of cracks to try to figure over all at the same time.
That is a joke made by the father of a young son.
Yep. Yep. No, that's accurate.
Let's take a quick peek at the defensive rating now, where the Celtics, they're back up to 9th. Okay. I thought that they might have I know they slipped down to 10th. So they're back up to 9th. 107.1 feels like a really high number for a defensive rating to be in the top 10. It's where the league is, but the Warriors are at 99.5. And then the Suns are second at 104.1. Like, what are the Warriors doing? Like, wow. They're just such a good team, man.
We're about to find out what they're doing.
Oh my God. Yeah, like I want to say, like you sit there and be like, oh yeah, the Celtics have the 9th best defense in the league at 107.2. Like that would have been last, I think, like 5 years ago. I guess it's just a different league right now. But I don't know. I guess I don't know. Like I guess this is when I say I don't know 3 times, I guess that means it's time to wrap up the show because I'm out of like possibilities for these guys. What do you think happens against Phoenix? Because I think they come out and I don't think they win. I'm not going to say that they win necessarily, but I think they play as well as they did against Utah against Phoenix.
Interesting. I mean, I'm concerned about where they seem to be at. Like, I know they rallied against the Clippers, but like, they're just, I guess, like from the the post game, and this is just like an eye test thing. This isn't like a numbers thing or anything, but like just from the post game press conferences and everything, it's just, I mean, they don't seem like they're in like this really like we got to fight. We're getting fired up. We're ready to like really turn things around against Phoenix. Like that just doesn't kind of seem like where they're at mentally. And I don't know where they're at mentally, and I could be wrong. Maybe everything that's happening behind closed doors. Guys are firing each other up and really giving rousing speeches, and we're going to see, like a Braveheart type performance against the Suns. But it just like that just isn't the vibe that I'm getting from this team right now. From the way they're playing and from the way that they're kind of communicating to us.
Well, I will say that to be fair, the post game press conferences were Schroeder and Tatum, who are like the most like low key press conference guys.
That's true.
You're going to get like, and this is the, the downside of not being in the locker rooms, not being with the team right now, that you can't go in there and see the attitudes, how they're communicating and all that stuff. We're just getting the guys that they send out and whoever that is. I think it's the past 2 nights. It's been Schroeder and Tatum, right? Like it's
yeah.
So we haven't even gotten the last time we talked to Marcus Smart was before the Lakers game in the shoot around.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Who knows? Like it's still weird covering this team. So, but look, the way I'm just approaching this season for now until they change my mind is as soon as you are convinced of one thing, they will come out and do the opposite. So
that's true. That is true.
As soon as like they will play well against Phoenix, they might beat Milwaukee and they might go to overtime against the Warriors and we'll be like, okay, they got it. And then they will get crushed by the Knicks. That's just as soon as you feel like, okay, then just, I got to catch myself and be like, wait a second. Like, it's like those memes that come out and they go, wait for it. Like that's what the Celtics season is, just a constant wait for it meme.
It's either that or it's because what I feel like it is that that goofy meme that's like, and I'll fucking do it again. Like I feel like it might be that one. But I also, I think can I go on a minor rant before you wrap this up? I just want to say, Brandon Boston Jr. Every team had a chance to draft this guy.
I should have known this was coming. Damn it.
For the record, I've been screaming about this kid since he was a sophomore in high school. I've been talking him up. I've been saying it. I said it all throughout the pre-draft process. I said, look, he was at Kentucky. Kentucky guys often are better in the pros than they are in college. And it was a COVID year. And it was one of the most messed up Kentucky teams I've ever seen. There was everything there was just saying, this guy's a steal. This guy's a steal. This guy's a steal. Wow, look at that. He's a steal.
Wasn't he like, he lost family members, right? To COVID. Was he the kid who lost family members to COVID?
No. So he had so he was on the scene. Terrence Clark, rest in peace, was his like his best friend. And so he had a really I think that was obviously very hard. But yeah, he was on the scene when that happened. But I mean, like obviously that's a unbelievably tragic thing to happen. But he's really talented, man. He's always had a lot to his game. It's never just been. I mean, when I first watched him, he had such a soft touch, such a good jumper. As he gets older, he adds like all of this ball handling. He's so tall. Like it was just there was always something there, and I would have been willing to bet a lot of money that he was going to come out of that draft to steal. And look at that.
I will say I can confirm that this isn't just the a fake I knew it because you said it once. When I was doing the draft show for the Locked On Network, did a ton of draft prep. I always listen to you and Grenham because you guys are like locally two of the most knowledgeable draft guys around. So I've heard you. I've heard you talk about Brandon Boston multiple times, and in confusion, like, what's he doing sliding down these draft boards? So I can confirm that, and he confirmed that very strongly. It's just another one. This is so funny that I talk about the Celtics should really look at moving Schroeder by the deadline for even I think 2 second-round picks is a great return for a free agent that you got. Like, you were gifted this guy, you're not going to re-sign him. Get those two second rounders. You're either going to use those 2 second rounders to get rid of Wancho or attach to somebody, or acquire somebody via the TPE and say, hey, we got this extra second. You got to send something out when you acquire via TPE. That could just be a great way to send something out. Or you have a couple of extra cracks at a guy like a Brandon Boston. And people say, oh, second round pick are meaningless. I'm fascinated by the dichotomy of how we treat second round picks, because they are alternately meaningless, but super valuable. Like, you need them to do certain business, and then it's like, but it's only a second round pick. Who cares? But you look at the second round pick was just the damn MVP. Like, a second round pick is leading the Warriors 99.5 defensive rating. Like, there are second round picks making super impacts around the league. So you need to have some cracks at that second round and have a good scouting staff to understand what you might be getting and use those two-way spots pretty shrewdly to make sure you're getting the right guys. So this is it's all tied in. Guys like Brandon Boston, chances to get guys like Brandon Boston, all tied in to the types of moves you make and all of that stuff. So
I got, like, second round picks, man. Like, one of the things they do, they let you just take a crack at somebody. Like, in the first round, I mean, you got the number 16 pick. Like, it would be really nice to just get a role player there, right? And you're like, okay, let me find somebody who's pretty safe, but who's also pretty good. That's why Saddiq Bey is like right there at 16. He's like that perfect, like that kind of that perfect guy for your role playing
favorite. Saddiq Bey.
I mean, it killed me to give Grenham any credit on Saddiq Bey, but no, but I mean, he, like that kind of guy, or like, that's why, Peyton Pritchard was a good pick at number 27, because he looks like he could be a role player. It's like that. That's why you make those picks. But I mean, if there's a guy that you look at in the second round and you're like, I think there might be something there, you can take a shot on him. It's just a second round pick. You're not committing like 4 years of money to him. Like, you have this opportunity to really take a swing at, hey, maybe you get the next Jokic. Maybe you get the next, the next Draymond Green. Maybe you get the next Brandon Boston. Like, there's always guys, and you give yourself bites at that apple, you might hit. And that's a very valuable thing, in my opinion.
Very valuable. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on for a bit. Thank you very much. Everybody go check out the Geno Time podcast and Tom's work at boston.com.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me, man.
Thanks to Tom. Always a fun conversation with Tom. Probably more fun hanging out and talking with him off camera, which maybe someday will be a podcast. Certainly a lot different podcast than this. Tom's great. Check him out at Tom_NBA on Twitter. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you're a regular subscriber, I really do appreciate that. If you're not, please do subscribe, especially on the YouTube show. Really trying to grow that channel. So please do that. And if you are a subscriber on either or both, please share the podcast. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everybody that they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network.